one thinks Tommy's microphone might not be functioning.
No, ain't no way my microphone's not working. No.
I also need to adjust my audio so it's not in music mode, because I had it set up for Quinn's guitar, which has a different input sensitivity and stuff like
working?
that. So I'm going to adjust some of these knobs on my end while we wait for Tommy.
Is my microphone really not working?
That was the first thing I've heard you say.
Oh,
was everybody else hearing
okay.
Tommy up until then?
Nope, that was the first thing I heard.
No, this is so sad.
First thing.
No worries, no worries.
I didn't say anything worthwhile, but I'm glad we noticed now and not 10 minutes into the VOD.
Yeah, I know. Well, and also, like, exactly at 3 o'clock, there were, like, 3 or 4 people here. It's better for us to not start exactly on time for this, especially since we just had the Parade Float Build contest. People might need to grab food or drink, so you're not holding anybody up.
Well, my stream is live now. If someone could take a visit and make sure that the audio levels are good. I know in the past there's been issues with audio levels, and I might have a bit of background noise. We had a tornado warning and some flooding in my town recently, and our entire basement had water pouring in from like the windows and a wall, like, you know, cracks in the foundation. So we've got some fans and dehumidifiers running to try to mitigate that. So if there is background noise, I apologize for that.
It's not noticeable now, and if you're on push to talk in general, like, even if it's subtle, it won't be a huge thing.
Okay.
I mean,
I know
this is we're not trying to cut a new record here.
No.
You know, like, it's good to have some level baseline of quality so we're not irritating people, but, you know.
I know Discord has some level of noise suppression, but Stream does not have that same privilege.
Gotcha. Oh, that didn't occur to me. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well,
The stream's all good.
Oh, go on.
The stream's all good.
Okay, as long as everything's all good and the audio levels are fine, like if Joe and the rest of people are talking aren't too quiet and I'm not too loud, or the other way around.
Yep. And I just started recording on my end, so we have a fallback audio only if we need it. Who did what?
There was like a sound effect.
I didn't.
Like a Minecraft sound effect, like a cave noise.
Was
that like the
soundboard's not disabled.
How do you disable the soundboard? Server settings.
I've turned off my soundboard volume, so that's fine.
Yeah, I can. See, this is one of the problems with Discord is they're constantly adding features that we don't necessarily want enabled. Because that could be a.
It's gone.
Cool. So. Okay, Tommy, is the document on your stream scrolled down a little bit, or is that the actual top?
Yeah, that's all of it.
Okay, for some reason I was looking at the one on the website. I thought it was in a different order. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong... I was looking at
a section. You might be looking at an old one.
Yeah, let me...
I think I have it up to date.
I was gonna use the one from the newsletter since that was supposed to be the final one. Oh, it does have emojis at the top. You know what? I had scrolled down to 2 meetings ago. That was my fault.
Wow.
Thank you, Tommy. Okay, well, Tommy, do you want to call us to order?
Okay, are we gonna start with the first item on the list then, if we're ready to go?
I feel like we might as well.
Okay.
Emoji. The first question was, when will we be adding the new emoji approved at past meetings? I realized that that's the sort of thing I should have been doing on the art streams. I gotten derailed with the pinball machine stuff. I was going to work on it this Wednesday morning, and then I got further derailed with the pinball machine stuff when I realized the dimensions were all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, not all wrong, but, like, one of them was off by 25 blocks, and that affects a bunch of stuff. So, anyway, core concept, I think that this upcoming Wednesday... we were already far enough with the pinball thing to take a break and focus on just designing the new emojis. And if it's not this Wednesday, I can't imagine anything next Wednesday that would be higher priority either. So we'll get them done this month. Just the pinball machine project in general has sprawled more than anticipated, and so we're just behind. That wasn't like lack of intention, that was just lack of time.
Okay.
And in particular, the previously approved ones were the animated dance emoji and the good point or fair point emojis. I've seen a lot of people posting cool prototypes or brainstorming things. I'm not going to use anybody's images, like, I was going to say verbatim, but that wouldn't, they're not verbal, they're illustratum. I'm not going to use anyone's images illustratum. I'm going to possibly use them as an inspiration to design something myself, and that would be done on stream. So, but yeah, it is cool seeing what people like and dislike, what they can read and not read. That is all very helpful. So we're going to be building off that. Okay. Wait, were the animated dance emoji and the good point emoji the ones we approved in the past?
Those are the ones up.
Those are the
for
new
suggestions.
ones.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I misunderstood that. I thought that was yeah. Okay. So animated dance emoji and good point emoji. I don't have any strong arguments against either of these.
The only argument I had seen made was the animated emoji. I think only Nitro users can use animated emojis, so that would be something only Nitro users in this Discord could utilize. I don't think that's like...
Wait, does that mean like multi-frame?
Yes.
I was thinking it was like emphatic, like this dance is expressive, like animated, like...
No, it meant literal framed animation GIF.
Oh,
emote.
no, I don't want to do multiple frames. I'm fine with having more than one, like the arms going one way, the arms going the other way type of thing. You know.
I think we could do that. I think that's a good compromise.
I think doing each frame as a separate one makes sense. Can the Shay Shay emoji be redesigned because it's illegible to me? Maybe. I mean, is it recognizable because no other emoji looks anything like it though? I don't know.
It wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah, it wasn't on the agenda, but we are on emojis in general and the design process. So like if there was a time to bring up emojis in the past, it's recognizable because I attended last quarter's meeting. Yeah, some of this is going to really depend on how much we want to do in terms of in-jokes or not. Realistically, most of these will slide into obscurity or nonsense over time. And so I don't know. It's kind of one of those like I don't feel strongly either way. Like while I'm working on the other ones, here's what I'll say is while I'm working on the other ones, if something strikes me as like, oh, there's a better way to demonstrate that, I can do it the better way. But like I don't have a better way in mind now. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm not gonna rule it out, but I'm not gonna promise it. It's not an unreasonable request, because to me part of the joke was that it was illegible, but you can always hover over it and it'll tell you what it is. So I don't know. Okay, so let's see. Do we have anything else on emoji before we move on? Tommy, did I miss anything on emoji?
You're just gonna select what to have for like something to utilize. Good point. Just using the inspiration.
I'm gonna look at what we've got, and I'm also gonna. I want to do a fuller exploration of this with Cleo, where we talk about how, one of the problems we have in our Discord is we don't have enough emoji that convey different types of agreement. Because, like, for example, we already have this TBH. We have mood, which are both forms of agreement. We have the 20 on the D20, which is kind of a form of like, wow, great job. We have the best person award. And there's also built-in emoji like the 100, people use like that. So like trying to figure out what makes a good point or a fair point distinct from these other things, I think is actually an interesting topic of conversation for me to have with Cleo.
Makes sense to me.
So yeah, like people were saying like valid would be a good word. And it's like, it's interesting to have mood and valid to me. But like, to me, that's the sort of like linguistic exploration that's out of scope for this meeting in particular today. That's something that I'll schedule in the future.
Sure.
So cool. It doesn't look like anybody else had any other immediate concerns about that, so I think we can move on. More channels. Ad Astra has suggested bringing back the fashion channel and word games via Dahlia. Okay, so the word games thing seems to come and go in waves, how much people would actually use it for posting things like Wordle or their Scrabble games or whatever. Um, I don't mind it being in general, but I wanted to get some feedback about that before we made a decision. Because, like, it's not necessarily out of scope for the community for us to add in something like that. If a channel makes things easier to mute that bother people, I generally like it. But I don't know. What do other people here think?
My thoughts are we can bring it back just because it is something that is actively happening in the Discord, and some people may want to mute that without having to lose conversation on other general gaming topics. And you know what? If at our next quarterly meeting we find it hasn't been used in over a month, we can archive it again.
Okay. I do want to get to the fashion thing. We're not skipping that. I wanted to kind of talk about the word game one first because I feel like that's easier for people to speak to without, it's less of a personal expression thing. So I kind of wanted to warm up with the low-hanging fruit there. Okay. So Wordles take a lot of vertical space per post. I was also concerned, do the Wordles create problems for screen readers? Like, it might be really good to put them in a separate channel from a screen reader standpoint. Lakshmi13 says, even though Ad Astra says they do cause problems for screen readers. Lakshmi13 says, even though I've been playing every day, I didn't post them in Gaming Journal because I didn't want to do it every day. Okay. Does anybody have a good reason not to bring back the Word Games channel at this point? It sounds like this is kind of a low-hanging fruit slam dunk. And maybe we just do it. I want to take the wins we can get here, where if a lot of us agree, we're happy to move forward. Let's just do it and move on. So I'm gonna give anybody who has a good reason that we shouldn't add it, because in terms of like sprawl, it doesn't actually really add any sprawl to the server in terms of moderation overhead. Because I don't feel like this is the sort of thing that gets contentious. You know what I mean? This isn't anything that's going to create policy issues or eat more time for me. It'll just make everybody else's life easier if we add it back in. So I was going to add that back in here. Word games, create channel. Okay. So that has been created. Something Tommy had discussed previously. So that in terms of channels as well. So like we have an agenda and we're gonna try and stick to it in terms of the scope, but like we're not here to waste anybody's time and kick something for 3 months if it's broadly in scope but maybe a little bit outside. So did I create the channel or de-archive the old one? I created a new channel. Is there... De-archiving the old one would be a challenge from a permission standpoint and a bunch of other things. We've already created a new one, whereas de-archiving the old one would be like 15 minutes of... And then people would still come back and be like, the permissions are wrong. Like, de-archiving a channel is not easy. Archiving a channel is easy, because it's easier to break things sometimes than to fix them. The way the archiving process works here. So, yeah. Under the concept of more channels, one thing that we've tossed around in the past, I think Tommy was the one that suggested it, although you might have been repeating it from somebody else, was the idea that any game that Joe is going to play repeatedly on stream, maybe we create a channel for that out of cycle. In the same way, like, if we need feedback about something to make the server better or something in some way, we don't wait for this meeting to spin up a feedback channel around it. We just do it so we can get the feedback and move on with our day. And if I start streaming a game every week, people might want to start playing it and talking about it. So not necessarily like, oh, Joe streamed No Man's Sky once, so we should have a channel for it. But like, hey, Joe and Badger are playing V Rising every week. Or Joe is playing Mario Kart every so often. Or like, see, that's the thing though, is I don't know, maybe Mario Kart doesn't need its own channel, but maybe V Rising does, or maybe neither of them do. Could I just get a general feel from the room about this? This is not something we need a decision about today, but I'm just trying to get a general like vibe check. If you want to chime in the meeting's discussion text with your thoughts there. Several people are typing in. That's exactly what I want. But Tommy, does this sound like?
I'm always in favor of you getting a new channel to have the space to talk about the thing that's currently got your interest, and other folks who are also interested will also get that space, and then folks who aren't interested can mute the channel. You know, not every channel is going to be applicable to every person, but I think so long as we don't have like an excessive amount of channels, I think it's okay to have like something you do, like it's almost like a seasonal kind of thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is one of those things too, where like those channels might end up archived when that series ends, right? So having, I do like the idea of having a V Rising channel, but a Mario Kart channel, because we don't really have a proper series with it. That feels like I said, just feeling it out, thinking about what feels right. Feels like Mario Kart every 2 months with Ollie and Martin or whatever. That's not a channel. V Rising once a week. It's a game that's actively under development, that like, if there's a lot of personalization and choices in like how you design your castle and stuff like that, like if other people started playing it and started talking about it in the game's general, then that I could see that being like enough of a distraction. And maybe we missed the boat on Tears of the Kingdom, but that also wasn't one that I was playing like on the schedule every week.
Right.
You know? But yeah. It's hard though too, because we're gonna talk more about HermitCraft later, but there is definitely there's a general consensus that I'm not. What do you call it when there's a general consensus and you're in the minority? I don't know, but there's a general consensus that people want to take at least 6 weeks off after this season ends. And that to me could be 3 months. So already having something, when I'm going to be stressed out about a bunch of other stuff if this goes on too long, already saying, you know what, we're just going to spin up a Civ channel so people can talk about Civ because I'm streaming a lot of Civ, or we'll spin up this channel because I'm streaming a lot of that. Not like, if we have a general agreement that we don't need to worry about games I'm streaming getting their own channels in the 3-month cycle, I think that's going to be good for everybody. You know, dissenting opinion. Yeah. Eclog says, regarding the excessive amount of channels, I feel like we're already there. So from the perspective of adding even more, it doesn't actually matter. I leave so much muting that scrolling between what I care about is just tedious as a note. Yeah, categorizing things is a problem too. Soon was a disaster. You could have spent 3 months touring people's bases on the Untitled server. Well, part of the problem too, last hiatus was thank you. Part of the problem last hiatus was that we were initially told it was going to be 4 weeks, and then it kept getting pushed back a week. So nobody wants to launch a new series that's going to take 2 months when HermitCraft is launching next week. But we actually had 2 months, right? So I'm trying to plan ahead better this time. Centauratron says, I noticed the Pokemon channel was a lot more active during the break between Season 8 and 9 when that was on stream. So yeah, having dedicated channels for the games you're playing could be good to keep from clogging general. Yeah, that's kind of... So, I guess what I'm saying is, just as a general philosophy, if it feels like people want to talk about the games we're streaming, we're gonna kind of handle those out of cycle. But like, if it's a game I don't care about or know anything about, like if everybody's like, Joe, the new I'm trying to think of it. The new Gears of War game is out. We really need a channel for it. I'd say it sounds like something you need a server for. Go spin up your own Gears of War server and talk about it there. I don't know anything about it. I don't need to be involved. You know what I mean? So so basically, if people really need a channel for a game I don't care about, we can still talk about it at the quarterly meeting. But for games that I'm streaming actively once a week or so, we'll just spin them up as we go. Does that seem fair, Tommy, as a summary that you could put in the minutes?
I think that's pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Because one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to sprawl into other people's interests too much. I'd rather let other people run their stuff. And I don't need everything. So let's go back into gaming real quick, and I'm going to just add... So we added word games, and we're going to add V-Rising. Create channel. Okay. Cool. What'll stop with games you stop streaming regularly? They'll probably get archived if the channels aren't used often. Basically, the next quarterly meeting, we usually would go through and talk about, like, channels we need to archive as needed. I didn't see anything in the list this time that I was like, ooh, we really need to archive that. So, in terms of more channels, okay, actually, like, we got 3 people typing. I'll let people finish saying what they're saying, and then we'll move on to the fashion point, which I have not forgotten. Thank you for your patience, Ad Astra. Eklog says there's so many categories, it's still a problem, particularly on mobile. I don't mind discussing this more in feedback, more channels if anyone's interested. Well, I mean, Eklogs, yeah, I'm not sure how better to categorize stuff. If you have suggestions about the categories, that's probably out of scope for this meeting, but we could come back to it next time. But yeah, I don't know. Like, honestly, it's just, like, we have 158 people online right now, not including all the people who are technically, we've got 287 that are invisible or offline. So, with 400 people, to some degree, you kind of need a lot of categories just to kind of keep things, to give those people places to talk about stuff. Like, we've got a bunch of categories toward the bottom, too, the different zones of archived rooms and stuff. Maybe have some sort of emoji before the name. I don't like that visually, and I'm not sure that it would be helpful for screen readers. Eklog says, I don't want to derail. That's fine. Yeah. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. I just think my organization philosophy is completely at odds to how this server works. That's fair. Ad Astra says you can make this a community server without discovery. I don't think making this a community server would mean anybody could join. So even without discovery, I think anybody here could create invites at that point, and then if one person buys an invite via Patreon and then generates invites for their bots, then we got to deal with bot spam. I don't think you can make a community server that people can't be invited to. The Discord community servers are intended to be discoverable, even if you turn discovery off. They're intended to be shareable via like word of mouth and stuff. Unless they've changed something. Like, the thing is about Discord, maybe I'm ignorant here, but they change stuff behind the scenes all the time, and I don't catch every blog post. So, but yeah, no, I don't think we want to make this a community server. Maybe have it so they have to confirm they're a member of Patreon. Well, that's what we already have. I don't see any reason to make this a community server. I'm actually not sure what problem that's supposed to solve. Does that allow you to do subcategories or something? You can make some channels completely invisible in the community server. That doesn't... That doesn't seem worth it to. I'm pretty sure I could do that with permissions in groups now. I just don't want to do that. Or are you saying individuals can decide which channels and categories they even see? Like, this doesn't really. This feels like going down a Discord specific. Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair, logs. Well, thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, it's just I don't think it's something that we're equipped to handle at this point. So. Okay, so moving on to the fashion channel, from Ad Astra. Sunflower Dragon says there's a server dropdown that says hide muted channels, so you can hide muted channels on your own. Oh. No problem, Eclogs. Well, that might solve your problem right there, actually. If Sunflower Dragon's thing works for your mobile setup. I don't know if that's desktop only, but... Magenta says, I would love to have the fashion channel back. I want a place to post my silly little outfits without derailing another convo or otherwise. Plus, there's broad overlap between identity, fashion, and spam pics. I think there's enough interest in the topic to warrant its own channel. Eclog says, oh, you can't hide the categories, though. Oh, interesting. Okay. Gotcha. Stellar says, fashion gives me a place to post pictures of clothing I made for other people. Well, I mean, we also have spam things you made for that. Identity wouldn't fit that at all. I guess here's kind of my point of view on the fashion channel. Is that feels to me like accepting a certain level of additional moderation responsibility by adding something in a very specific way. Like, when we had the channel about COVID, instead of just general current events for people to talk about it in, that's me saying, like, I'm creating a space to talk about this that I feel capable of moderating well, or passably at least. And I feel like I don't know enough about fashion to feel comfortable assuming that level of responsibility, especially because that's the sort of thing that can lead to a lot of conversations behind the scenes. Like, we had a big problem with somebody posting something and it's like, is this implied nudity? Is this not implied nudity? Like, and the thing is too, if moderation action is taken about something in the fashion channel, people get more upset about it in some ways than if it's like, because it's part of their identity, even if it's not posted in the identity channel, it can just basically be, it's basically something that's so important to some people, but something I'm so bad at that I don't think I should own it. I think that's the sort of thing that, like, the things I feel more comfortable hosting, which I barely feel comfortable hosting identity. Like, that's kind of like, and this feels like pushing into higher specificity than identity. And this is the sort of thing, like, if we had more staff budget, I would have no problem delegating that to people who are more expert in it. But, like, I mean, I've only taken one college level course on fashion and its relationship with history and culture and identity, but I got the impression it's kind of a big deal. And but I know enough to know it's important, but I don't know enough to run it. And so I think this is going to basically fall into the category of things that would be a nice to have if money were no object.
I have a suggestion.
What's your suggestion?
So when we first created the Feels channel, it was created as like a temporary kind of channel where we weren't sure how it would go, considering, you know, there are positive feelings and there are negative feelings. And the Feels channel has been going strong ever since we first created it in 2020. I think we give the fashion channel another chance, and we'll put it up for review again at our next quarterly meeting at the end of 2023. And if we feel like, hey, you know what, this was exactly what Joe was worried about, it's a lot of extra moderation, then we can get rid of it again. And if it's fine, we'll carry it out for another quarter. I think it's allowed.
Speaking of being allowed, Ad Astra writes, am I allowed to speak or just type? You're allowed to speak. Your ring keeps flashing green, but it doesn't stay solid. Are you pushing to talk?
My push to talk is T, and I can't figure out how to change it. So every time I type, it's it's flashing. I'm sorry. But Kindless in the Feedback More channel said that he thinks the Identity channel is a safe place for images of outfits that help people express who they are, and having a channel dedicated to just random outfits serves two very different and important needs.
Well, but we also have a spam photos channel. Like, I guess I don't know. So I think Tommy. Okay, so people are saying I think Tommy's suggestion is a good happy medium. I agree. Here's the problem though: is experimental things that might cost money need to be postponed until after the season 10 launch. Like, we haven't really gotten into the budget part of the stream yet, but as I mentioned at petitions, I was expecting today at petitions to announce that we were closing the server at the end of this HermitCraft season and that we would not be reopening for season 10. We would not have a flagship server next season. Vanillish and Create would close out at the end of their natural lives and would not be replaced. That was what I was expecting to have to say. I was expecting to have to come in here and explain that we were probably going to have to curtail a lot of everything. And I wasn't sure how deep those cuts were going to have to be. Before the Tumblr kids came in and kind of saved Christmas with their extra $500 of Patreon money a month. Now, the thing is, that didn't really... That's not enough that we're actually, like, making money. We're still losing money. We're just losing money more slowly. And so the hope is that something will happen where I will make money in the future, but some of the plans that I had to make money in the future were dependent on having the car, which I no longer have. And so I am getting, at some point, a check from the insurance company for the remainder of the car's value, but that's been its own whole runaround, and that's not revenue. That's liquidation. We're not in a great place. I say we. Like, revenue for the first 7 months of this year is down $20,000 compared to the first 7 months of last year. I've spent extensive amounts of time and analysis figuring out what I should expect from the remaining 5 months of this year. And we're going to end this year probably down, if nothing changes, $30,000 compared to last year in revenue. I've been able to cut a lot of costs from a lot of places. And we're going to scrape by, hopefully, until Season 10 launches, as long as it doesn't have too long of a hiatus. But we don't know how long that hiatus is going to be. And I really don't feel comfortable committing anything. Have I had to moderate any fashion-related posts at all? We had a photograph that had some implied nudity in it that was like a whole thing. And the problem is people get really upset if you about like you're implying that they're implying something. It's like, well, how does Discord define implied nudity? Like, it's just one more thing for me to stress about. And I don't... So I think that all the points you guys are making are good, but, like, I feel like it's... If I say yes to a bunch of small, risky things, I'm going to stress out more. And... because I'm going to be like, any of these small... Like, the problem is, I'm only taking bad risks at this point. The good risks that I had lined up, where I was like, oh, maybe this will pan out, maybe this will pan out, maybe this will pan out, a lot of those depended on having the car. And so, well, what if I need to buy a new car and dump all my current savings into it? Or what if... what if nothing good pans out? We're going to be down $10,000 over the next 5 months. Like... which is slowed heavily. Like, we would have been down more without those Tumblr kids. And I know that Tumblr kids is probably derogatory. They prefer Tumblr adolescents. But, like, the people that showed up with that $500 a month on Patreon didn't show up because of how I was already running this Discord. They showed up because of the streams and the videos. And I can't be adding a bunch of mental stress to myself and focus on thanking them by getting out there and trying to turn around more videos more quickly and having higher energy streams. This is the sort of thing that's going to nag at me. And whether or not that's like and it's going to make me feel like a failure. I'm going to be like, if we just made an extra few $100s a month here and there, I'd have no problem saying, Tommy and Queen Dark Lady, the two of you are in charge of supervising this fashion channel. Here's an extra $200 a month of budget for your hours. I don't want to worry about it. But I don't, honestly, even if I had that extra, it probably shouldn't cost that much, but I don't know. And the problem is when things go into crisis mode, they spiral, and we try to keep it behind the scenes, but I can't deal with it. And trying to scrape across the finish line for season 9 with an unknown hiatus for season 10, I'm under a lot of stress, and I don't want to screw that up. And I'm probably the goal here is not to keep the business afloat. I'm at the point where I'm assuming, based on current revenue and current costs and current savings, I'm going to have to get a job again sometime in the next few months. Ideally, it's a job that doesn't require a car now, which womp womp. And it better not be a job that requires my kid to change schools, because I don't really want my kid to change schools. If I can, the real thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull off not having to get the job until after the season 10 launch. Because even if I told my employer, hey, for season 10, I got this recording on Tuesday at 3 o'clock, the employer's like, sure, take it off, but I really need you to come in on Wednesday. Tuesday we show up, and somebody's like, oh, hey, you know what? I can't make it. Can we push it to Wednesday? I'm really like, yeah, Wednesday's fine. I'll be like, well, my boss said I had to come in on Wednesday. And they'll be like, well, our videos will do worse if this other person isn't there than if you're not there. We don't really get a lot of discoverability from you, so that's fine. You can join for the Season 11 launch. It's fine. I don't want to miss the Season 10 launch. And so I'm going to be a little bit conservative with where my money goes. Fairy Terrier says, how have the other hermits with jobs handled that? Impulse Cleo and I were the last ones. And it wasn't well handled. It was continuously a problem. The only reason I was able to attend some of this stuff with my previous employers was because I literally rented an office downstairs from my day job office in the same building. And then I could go record. I could hop in on my breaks or take my lunch break, run down 3 flights of stairs, run back up 3 flights of stairs. I was popping in for group recordings in the middle of the workday, structuring my meetings and stuff to allow me to. But I can't count on doing that. I can't count on being able to afford to rent a studio space in whatever building I work in. And if I can get a job working remote and it's relatively flexible, that's great. But realistically, I think at this point, what I need to do is I need to try to make what revenue and what savings I have stretch until March. There's no way the season doesn't launch. Probably, it'd be April at the latest. But if I can make it until April or May without going under, that's fine. But this year alone, because revenue's been down so much, I've already had to withdraw about 60% of my retirement fund. And I had originally talked to NJ about this, and I was like, at the point where I have to touch the retirement fund to make payroll, we might have to just look at getting rid of the staff, just closing everything down, basically, that costs money, because I shouldn't be touching that retirement fund. But at around the same time, some other things were happening. We got some short bursts of revenue or activity where I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe we'll keep it going. And the problem is that none of those things ever persisted. I got the No Man's Sky check. I got some money from the TCG. It's okay, but still, on the whole, we're down about $2,900 a month in revenue, and I'm cutting all the costs I can, except for currently the staff, and I don't want to cut the staff further. but I also can't promise paying more. Toxic says full-time remote positions are super common now in tech. Yeah, and there were also a lot of tech layoffs earlier this year. So
Can I interrupt you, Joe?
Yes.
We're getting into further topics on the agenda. This was about
Yeah,
the fashion
sorry.
channel. No, it's okay.
So what I'm saying is, if we had the money, the answer would be yes, but I don't think we have the money. We can move on.
So, well, I want to give it a cleaner ending than that. So, it looks like this is out of scope for us currently. How about we review this again next year? I don't know if we have to wait for quarter 2, but it's not a no. It's a not now.
It's not a no. It's a not feasible. It's infeasible, not undesirable. If that makes any sense.
Yes.
And it won't be feasible until after the season 10 launch, would be my guess. Because either if we happen to make a huge amount of money because people love season 10, great. If not, that's when I'm going to hopefully, once we're a week or two into season 10, that's when I would hopefully be starting back to work. Perhaps we should decide where fashion-related posts should go in one of the existing channels. Like I said, I think it's up to the person posting it. If they think it's about their identity, they can post it in identity. If they think it's a photo they took, they can post it in photos. If it's something they made for somebody else, spam things you made. I feel like we already covered that.
Centertron, okay. It was unintentional, but yes.
So, next item then, Tommy.
So, next is from Mahi0. He had an issue where he was not getting YouTube stream notifications. I don't know if that's still an issue he was running into. I don't know if that's on YouTube's end or what. Potential solution suggested by Badger was we could have a stream announcement channel.
We could add that back in if people want it. I was going to ask, has the calendar helped? Because the calendar thing is actually, in my opinion, the best solution. Mahi's the person who raised this, says the calendar has been good for me. The great thing about the calendar is you don't need to have a connection to the internet. Because, if the problem with YouTube notifications isn't on YouTube's end, it's just the people happen to not get notifications on their phone because of flaky internet, well, the calendar notifications aren't coming from the internet. You've already, if you edit it to your phone's calendar, it cached it locally. So that seems even better than Discord, which would have been internet dependent. So we'll give people a little bit of chance to weigh in there. But as far as I'm concerned, we did take action on this, and it's working. But I'm happy to hear feedback. Is there a way to use webhooks to make channel notification automatic? That's one channel I would appreciate. So this gets into kind of structural philosophy. I don't want to build hooks into Discord because I'm worried that Discord's either going to get bought by Facebook or change their terms of service to say all the text here can be used to train AI or something, and we're going to have to get rid of it anyway. We're going to have to, we might have to replace Discord with a self-hosted solution and then throw away all that stuff. And so, I'm surprised Discord has lasted this long. But yeah, I don't, it's not impossible, but it doesn't seem like a long-term investment. Whereas the calendar thing that we set up is something that theoretically could work for a decade. And if we did build a self-hosted platform for a forum or a chat system, which I keep my eye on a few pieces of technology that would be used to replace this if we needed it. If we did have to switch to one of those, I'd feel much more comfortable spending time building an integration, because programming stuff like that is in my wheelhouse, but I'd rather do it for something that we control and own than for something Discord controls and owns. It's kind of my thoughts. Anything else on that before we move on?
So long as nobody thinks this is a channel that we should have, and if the calendar solution is so far working well for everyone.
Yeah, well, Kindlelist says it could be something that only I post in, but part of what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to streamline everything. Mm-hmm. Because, like I said, it's the people that saved the moderation finances. Like, the people that saved the Discord are people who weren't part of the Discord at the time. They were part of the streams and part of the videos, and I need to focus my energy on making good things. And I'm chronically overextended, and I really I don't want to have one more thing to do. So yeah, I in theory, if I wasn't overextended, having one more thing to do would be fine, but I just...
It doesn't sound like anybody is asking for that since the calendar.
Well, no, Kindlelist literally asked for that at 347.
No, I mean,
Or...
it sounds like it was just a suggestion for what it would look like if we did have it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't, I mean, if anything, yeah, just try to provide options. No, that's fair. Okay, well, we can move on then. And the stream schedule is fairly regular. I'm trying to post things on the calendar and update the calendar. Like, when Quinn wasn't going to be here on Wednesday, I removed Quinn's name days in advance. You know, same thing for Cleo not being there. Or sorry, Quinn wasn't there on Thursday, Cleo wasn't there on Wednesday. You know, so that allows me to update and provide other information too.
Right.
So, okay. Let's keep moving here then. What do we got next, Tommy?
Next is your suggestion for a topic, website usability and changes.
Okay, so part of that was going to be me asking, how do y'all like the calendar? Is it working? It seems like we already did talk about that under the notifications thing to some degree. The biggest other change to the website is going to be that the newsletter is going to switch over to once a month. And after Tommy posted on the website, I'm going to cross-post it on Patreon on the next business day that people would get emails. And then that'll also go out as a monthly Patreon newsletter.
I just realized I had it on the agenda twice. My apologies.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. So, yeah, because it kind of fell under the SMART goals. Okay. So, yeah. That's that. Okay. So, I think, does anybody else have any... Oh, and I did want to especially call attention to, if you have feedback about the website, posting it to feedback website is good. One of the things I've seen a lot of people say is that certain things like live and soon aren't in the heading. That's because they were kind of experimental up until today. I wanted to get final feedback from the public, or, well, you know, the Discord public, before putting those more broader facing. Everybody who's found them so far, I've explicitly, like, told them to get there. They didn't just stumble in. And there's been a lot of other really good feedback there. I'm basically going to go through this with, like, I don't know if you guys know the term a punch list, but, like, Tommy found a problem with the footer I need to fix. We need to add those to the titles. So yeah, we're gonna be working through that sometime, hopefully this upcoming week, if not sometime this month. Okay. So Tommy, did you have anything else on the website? We got some people typing. Let's give them a chance to say what they got to say.
While they're typing, I like the new soon page. I'm glad I don't have to type out the stream schedule every week. It's nice.
Can soon.joehills.net link to the calendar as well? We can add subdomains. Would joehills.net/live be worse than live.joehills.net?
They're the same.
Is live
to me,
a top level domain? Maybe I should get joehills.live. I don't know. Probably not. That's gonna be like $200 or something I don't have probably. So we don't want to do that.
I think having the links at the top of the page will be the most important at this point.
Yeah. Mahi says, I like the option of /live, but until something happens with YouTube, I'll keep using that for battery consumption reasons. Yeah, well, phones are going to have better hardware decoders for different things over the next year or two. I think a lot of those... and also the transcoding at server scale with ARM is becoming more viable. So I think those two things, between our phones getting better and the server chips getting better, they'll hopefully meet in the middle in a year or two. So, like, I understand it's not optimal for the next month or two, but, like, yeah, this is kind of one of those long view things where I'm like, okay, we'll be ready for it when it's there. Okay. Anything else on that, Tommy, that you can think of?
Not that I could think of. The next heading on the agenda is a moderation philosophy and review.
Okay. This is something that's very challenging to talk about because it's a lot about making compromises. And not necessarily compromises where I'm saying, Tommy, you feel this way and I feel this way, so we need to meet each other in the middle. But in this case, a lot of it feels like I'm dealing with feasibility and reality, and we have a lot of really good hypothetical ideal options, but we're not there. Like the proposal that Tommy wrote, some of y'all might have seen it, for escalating problems with repeat offenders would work incredibly well for us in a situation where the server is 10 times as big, Tommy's full-time staff and has several part-time people working under him. Like, this is the policy that I would be paying Tommy to write for me if I could afford to pay Tommy to work for me full-time. And I appreciate that, but I also look at where we're at with the books, and we're not there. And so to some degree, like, there's gonna have to be, like, like I said, when I initially put the moderation philosophy review on here, I was assuming this was going to be a talk about we can't afford moderators, so we should probably shut down most of the Discord except for, like, the Minecraft channels and the live channel. And the live event chat channel will only be open when I'm live. And the Minecraft channels will stay open until the Minecraft servers spin down at the end of the year. But, like, this is... If we can't afford moderators, maybe we can't stay open. Unless people feel very strongly that, like, they're willing to, like, just kind of see how it went. Now, luckily, once again, Tumblr Kids Save Christmas, that extra $500 does not cover all of our staffing and server costs. Between the servers themselves, tooling, like, back-end business tooling for dealing with having the staff, and then the actual, like, staff expenses, we spend about $1,000 to $1,100 a month. And if we cut that, that would give me a much bigger glide path here. Now, that extra $500 a month from the Tumblr folks offset enough of that I think it's worth trying to keep this going. But I'm scared of expanding too much into, like, bureaucratic processes and things like that when it's... I think what we really kind of need to do is just get back to basics of face-to-face communication. I mean, by which I mean, I did this whole audit of all 42 Modmail complaints. Now, not all of those complaints were made, like, by 42 different people. Like, one person might have made 4 complaints, another person made 1, right? That sort of thing. But looking at them, I'm realizing that some of the problems that compounded over time happened because I made the mistake of cutting the budget for monthly staff meetings. So people were handling tickets in a void, and what Tommy's describing in this process helps if we have too many people to all get together and talk, and if we have too many people, too many visitors to the Discord to keep track of everybody. But, like, at the scale we're operating at right now, the human scale, I think it's worth it to me to basically allocate... I'm not going to say exactly what it would cost for me to have an extra 1-hour meeting every month with everybody, but everybody who works for me has a minimum wage of $20 an hour. And so let's assume 5 people at this meeting. That's at least $100 an hour, $100 a month, you know. So it's one of those things, like, in theory, we could save some of that money by only including staff members that directly work on moderation. Although I don't like the idea of excluding NJ because I really value NJ's opinion. But, like, when I'm looking at the budget and I'm panicking, like, I'm like, maybe the fact that I wasn't willing to consider that is naive of me. Maybe I need to be harsher with what I cut. Like, so I think what I want to do is basically go back to having the budget for the monthly meeting and see how that goes for a little while, and then try to make any policies past that based on the assumption that we will have those meetings rather than on the assumption that we won't have those meetings or that those meetings cannot be practical or viable. Because, like I said, what Tommy wrote would work very well in a large scale environment or in an environment where we can't talk to each other. But I don't think we're there quite. And so
I have
go
two
on.
things. One suggestion is, if your concerns about the monthly meeting for staff are that you can't afford to have every staff member attending those meetings, if you do
Yeah.
want to try having the meetings with only moderator level staff, I could also provide minutes for those meetings as well for NJ, if that is something that you think would be beneficial.
I think, well, and realistically, it'd be beneficial just for us to have a written record of what we talked about and why. And honestly, like I would still have my project management meetings with NJ separately. And anything that I felt like needed her particular attention, I could bring up with her there. She could, if she had something like I saw this was on the minutes. Did you guys consider this? I could say yes or no, that sort of thing. Because that would also be one less person to try to. We also had scheduling problems with the meetings,
Right.
and having one less person to try to schedule, we'd be more likely to get everyone there. Amanda says, I'm not sure if you already have a spreadsheet for data collection. Yeah, I constructed that during the audit. The problem is, though, so we actually already had all that data in Discord. But it wasn't necessarily obvious, or you wouldn't necessarily find it in a helpful way. But as I was going back through, and this was like probably the most, like, I was gonna say this is the most depressing thing I did, other than go through all the finances. Like just looking at every single complaint and seeing like reliving the timelines of some of these events was like, oh my gosh. But like, the thing is, with the bureaucratic thing, people might be like, okay, well, when do these old complaints fall off, or blah blah blah. Like, if we're working at more of a person to person level, the complaints don't need to fall off because you just look at the timestamp and go, hey, this person was told 3 years ago not to do this one thing. Now somebody has a complaint against them about something similar, but like it was 3 years ago, and chances are, once again, we're still a small enough community. We know that person. Is this person just having a bad day? Is this like, but part of this is when I'm talking about a more person to person approach, not just having the staff meetings resume, but also like we would get a lot of complaints where somebody would be like, "Hey, this person was kind of rude," and we'd be like, "Well, we'll keep a note of it," and I mean we did, but like we wouldn't go like talk to them about it, because in general, with everybody being so stressed out during the pandemic, I just kind of assumed like there was gonna be a lot of low level simmering where people were just going to occasionally, they haven't talked to somebody in real life for 10 days and they're just occasionally going to pop off a little bit. And, it's not great, but, there's a difference between like genuine misunderstandings and somebody who like logs onto the server in order to make themselves feel better by making other people feel worse on purpose consistently, right? Like, so a lot of the complaints were like, hey, somebody said something that was kind of insensitive, or somebody said something that was rude. We wouldn't necessarily have followed up on it, but I'm starting to think like maybe we should err on the side of following up on these things more, especially because now that we're coming out of the pandemic, these things happening are less likely to be based on external factors that would self-correct. You know what I mean? Like, in general, I was kind of assuming, well, if somebody's having a bad day, it's hard for everybody right now. They don't need us on their case. But you know what? Like, maybe we're a little bit more, what's the word? Intercessory. Yeah, maybe we're a little bit more intercessory than we'd been. You know. Cause yeah, clearly what we were doing, people weren't happy with. But I feel like if we're not doing it at the personal level, like, why are we bothering to do it? Like, I don't want this to just be like, oh, hey, we copied the structure of this other server and we're doing stuff their way because that's how you run a server with X number of people. You know, people tell me that this community is unique and interesting, and I think it should have, as a result, a complementary approach to moderation. Now, that means we're trial and erroring a lot of things. And in some cases, well, here's the problem. For the last year, when we weren't having these monthly meetings, we weren't actually trialing. We were just erroring. We were just making the same mistakes repeatedly and not realizing it. And I say we, it's more on me than the staff, because the staff are handling individual complaints properly, but we weren't seeing the patterns and we weren't responding to the patterns. I think we need to get back into taking action where necessary. But we also need to, and this is going to be made easier now that Discord has timeouts, which it didn't before. When we first started talking about like our ideal system, we were like, do we want to use bots for timing people out or muting people? And it's like, it's its own whole headache. So Discord now has some timeouts. So I think that we can use those to kind of like let people know, hey, look, if there's a misunderstanding, we might time both people out until they can cool down, you know? Like, and we also need to let people know, like, hey, just because you got a timeout doesn't mean you're not welcome here. Just because you and somebody else got in a heated argument in current events or something and it spilled over, like, that doesn't have to be a crisis. That could just be two people having a bad day, you know? So, yeah, basically what I'm looking at is creating a better paper trail with the spreadsheet I already created for the audit. I'm going to share that with the rest of the staff. There's no new information in that spreadsheet. It's all information they already have access to through the Modmail interface, but it just wasn't very well organized. So that's not like a new privacy concern for anybody or anything. We have access to the timeouts. So at the first meeting we would have with the staff, I would want to talk about figuring out, you know, how readily and broadly to use those, giving people better warnings. You know, that's what when I talk about us being more intercessory. Determining when a warning is and isn't warranted is going to be a challenge. We haven't really done that before. But like I was saying, my calculus teacher from high school who passed away, when I was at his funeral, I was thinking a lot about how he handled discipline in the classroom. And I got a lot of warnings. Didn't mean he didn't like me. I was a terrible student, but I was great at calculus. I just didn't want to do homework or be quiet. But I was still welcome in his classroom. He was a really good teacher. And I don't know how to create that environment that he did, but I'm going to be thinking about it and trying to work toward it. And that might be too loosely structured in terms of ambitions for the taste of some people here, but realistically, like, there's no point in having this place at all if it doesn't reflect my worldview and my experiences. Like, we kind of got a second chance here that I wasn't expecting to have with that Tumblr cash infusion, and I don't want to waste it. And so, yeah, we might fail at this in new and exciting ways, and that's going to suck possibly for some people, but, you know, Tommy and the rest of the staff are going to have eyes on it and help me try to not screw this up too bad. And, you know, that's just so we don't have I don't have new policies to announce today. I guess technically the meeting, restoring the meetings in the budget even at a time when I'm cutting a lot of other things, allocating extra budget there is a new policy. But like in terms of like new rules or processes, I think we need to talk about that as a staff at that first meeting and then get back to y'all. So if you continue to have any thoughts on this stuff, that feedback, moderation, and rules is going to be where to put it. Tommy, I feel like I've said everything that I need to say. Is there anything I'm missing? Any gaps? Anything I haven't addressed? Because I'm not trying to like intentionally be like, oh, but there's one thing I don't want to talk about. I'm like, I think I'm done.
I can't think of something specific, but I do want to give a moment for anybody who may want to type something.
Perfectly fine with me.
Oh, one thing I do want to mention is I know some people had talked about at one point changing the message you send to new patrons. That'll include, things like where to find like a Modmail tutorial and like...
I did add the Modmail.
Okay, good.
I added the DM Modmail. I didn't add the tutorial itself to that.
Because it does need updating, which I think is fair.
Yeah, we need to... Well, and the other thing is, so... The when to contact Joe and how to contact Joe, we're gonna have to kind of put in a whole kind of flow chart. Like, is it about Patreon billing? Please don't send it to Modmail because the staff doesn't necessarily need to know anything about your billing situation, right? That's something I'm handling solely through Patreon, and the Patreon message interface lets me see all of your billing stuff at the same time, so it's just way easier. Letting people know, hey, certain types of problems on the Minecraft server, you should bring up at petitions. Other types of problems, please let us know immediately via Modmail because we cannot let that sit, And having some clear examples for that is the sort of thing that we would, for example, brainstorm at that next staff meeting.
Right. We can put that in on the schedule then for whenever we do schedule.
Yeah, and so that's where I'm at on that. And then like the when to use Modmail and when not to use Modmail. Some of the stuff we had previously said only use it if you want to report bannable offenses. If we're going to take a more intercessory posture, we're going to need to reduce the threat level there. Like, look, if you think somebody needs to be talked to, if you need us to tell somebody to knock it off, let us know. Like, the way I'm seeing this is I'm also really I've been looking at how a lot of like tournament directors run their pinball events, where you have a lot of people some people are very focused, some people are there to goof off and have fun, and there can be personality clashes.
Right.
And it's also, these are high stakes environments where people might have paid $20 to be in this tournament, $100 to be in another tournament, and there's money on the line for the prizes, right?
Right.
So the people who are there, they paid to be there. They want a certain level of respect from everybody else participating, but there's still going to be inevitably some clashes. And watching how the tournament directors occasionally, might have to deal with disputes and wade into things that I don't necessarily want to wade into. I'm starting to see the value of when somebody, when the tournament director coming over early and saying, hey man, knock it off. It's not the place for that. That can go a long way, whereas if you let it sit or you let that person go bother two other people or something like that, like, you got different problems. So, yeah, I'm warming up to the idea of being more involved, and we don't know exactly what that will look like, but from a philosophy standpoint, I feel like this is an approach that's gonna hopefully address most of the problems we've had in the last year and a half, and maybe not immediately solve all of them, but set us on a better track. Amanda says, I'm part of the category that's worried they might say something wrong. Would this new system of intercession more often help prevent that? Well, I think it would help people feel more confident about things if they knew, like, as long as you're genuinely or generally acting in good faith, you're not going to get... The first interaction you have with a mod isn't going to be to get banned.
Unless
if you're
trying
around
to get banned.
Yeah, unless you're trying to get banned. We've had a few people that, like, there was one guy who was speedrunning getting banned from every Hermit's Patreon server. And yeah, like that guy got banned. But, you know, I don't know what he expected. But yeah, like realistically, the idea here is if a moderator tells you, hey, you might not realize it, but you're making trouble, and then you go, oh, I didn't realize it. Oh, okay, cool. We'll just, you know, chill, knock it off. Basically, the moderation philosophy is going to come down to chill, knock it off. Like, if we tell somebody to chill and knock it off, and instead they're just like, I'm so angry about this, I'm going to go create more problems for more people, we throw them out. But if they say, oh, my bad, should I apologize? You can if you want, just, you know, I'm not here to demand apologies from anybody. I'm not here to repair relationships. Okay? I will tell people to stop antagonizing other people because, hey, you might not realize you're antagonizing this other person. Please stop. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll stop. But you know what? If that other person doesn't want to be apologized to, they don't want to be friends with you, it's not my job to make you friends. Just stay out of each other's way. Give each other space. You know? Like, there's hundreds of people here. Not everybody's going to be pals. We can't have a community with this many people from this many parts of the world and this many different age groups without just having some intrinsic personality clashes. And that's okay. Learning to function in a space like that, I think, is valuable. And thriving in a space like that is even more valuable. I really feel like one of the things that makes this community special is that we don't always take the easy way out on some of this stuff. By not having super easy, clear policies on some of this, we're possibly creating more trouble for ourselves later. But I think it's worth trying. And like I said, the last year and a half or so, once we canceled the staff meetings for budget reasons, we had basically stopped trying. I had stopped trying. The staff was doing the best they could with the time they had, but like I just didn't have the money to approve a lot of hours, and so everything was cut down to the bone, and things fell through the cracks, and that's ultimately on me. So yeah, I'm trying to. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna keep this place open. Let's try and do it right. You know, is how I'm approaching it, and to me, doing it right might not be doing it by the book that Tango's community follows or Ren's or whatever, but we're very different. So, yeah. Feedback will be welcome on this because this is experimental, but I think generally we have a good group of people here, and it should work out okay. Cool. I think that was everything everyone had said on that. Tommy, any other last minute notes before we move on?
I think that's it on that. The next item we have on the agenda is you and your SMART goals.
Yes, SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, third thing.
It's technically a fifth thing.
Yeah, well, it's actually, you know, because it originally was SAT goals, and then, like, the M and the R got in there. It's the patriarchy, you know, Mr. Goal just jumping in. No, it's... God. This is actually going to kill me. I started making this as a joke, but now I can't. I'm like, this is such a good joke that I don't need to remember the truth anymore. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, we've got 5 goals right now. These are not necessarily ranked. These are not necessarily in order. But the first one, straight up right here, says complete pinball machine by end of season. This is really important to me because this is, in order for us to have a strong start to season 10, we need to have a strong end to season 9. I really got consumed by this legal immigration process at the beginning of this year, and I got really distracted and didn't focus on getting videos out. The streams, I was exhausted and stressed. I've been trying to sleep better and guard my time better, and I think it's been generally helping. I've been getting episodes out more consistently. This week I would have had an episode out if I wasn't helping with that perimeter thing. But that's a different trade-off. There's a difference between me saying I'm gonna make time for my friends on HermitCraft rather than editing, rather than like I am going to make bad financial decisions. And this is part of why we're in the financial trouble, is because I tried to save $5,000 by doing this immigration paperwork myself. You know, because like with Badger and I, you know, trying to get my fiance here, it was like, okay, I don't want to pay an attorney $5,000 if I can figure this out. I'm pretty smart. I can figure this out. Instead, I wasted months, just months and months, stressing about it, trying to chip away at it, hitting walls, and I ended up pulling the $5,000 out of my retirement fund anyway, which then was taxed with a bunch of penalties, so it ends up being way more than $5,000 pulled out, and so I need to play catch up. We're way off on the schedule for the pinball machine. It was supposed to be way further along than it is. And so some of the internal components might not get fully wired up. I've gone through with NJ and talked about breaking everything down into a list of like must-haves, nice-to-haves, and like overtime. Let's say that the season runs an extra 2 months long. There's a bunch of features for the pinball machine that like in real life on pinball machines, there's like the pro model, which is the baseline, the premium model, which has some extra features, and then the collector's edition or limited edition model. And basically I said, okay, we should have the baseline model of the pinball machine done by the target end date for the season. But if the season gets pushed back by 2 months because decked out is so much more fun that like it gives everybody this new second wind, and we don't start the next we don't end this season until 3 months into next year. At that point, I've got 3 months more of pinball machine work I can do. We can keep working on the base and making it like a higher end pinball machine by adding extra art and cool features and stuff. So that's fine. But in the very least, I didn't want it to end the season half done. Like the playfield being unfinished in time for me sending Aviva the artwork for the card. I was kind of frustrated. I was like, I should have had this layout done for the playfield so Aviva could draw it. And the card still came out beautifully. Hundreds of people bought it. I'm very happy about that. But like, you know, that was also kind of a wake up call of like, I'm so far behind on this. I need to get this done. Kendall says other hermits are willing to use things that members of their communities have designed to help get their projects done. Is there a way you feel comfortable getting design help from members of this community? That's two things there, Kendall. Part of the whole point of this project for me was to understand how every piece of a pinball machine fits together. And so I have to be the one interpreting the photographs and the 3D models into blocks for that to be educational for me. Second, that's actually a huge point of conversation inside the HermitCraft community right now about how much we should be letting other people design stuff for us. Like, you know, like, so I don't want to get involved in that. It would be an inopportune time to do that, and it wouldn't help me achieve my goals of learning from the machine. I'm pretty confident that if I keep a good pace, we should be on track. But, like, I have to make it a priority. Is Fall still looking to help other hermits with building? Possibly, but once again, like, a lot of the stuff I'm doing, it's not like with the perimeter thing where they could just say, hey, everybody take a few shulkers, you know, go place some dirt. Like, the pinball machine is like a precision instrument with very specific parts that go in very specific places. And Lightmatica is another thing that, like, you know, we've been talking about. Are we too dependent on it? So I don't want to be handing false Lightmatica files of like, hey, I built one pop bumper, help me build the other two, right? What I could do is I could say, hey, False, today we're going to learn to build pop bumpers. I'll stand on this hole and you stand on that hole. okay, we're going to start by building a square, and then, you know, that's going to be where the mount goes. Okay, now we're going to put the ring here, and then, like, something like that where we explain the build piece by piece for repetitive parts, maybe. But, yeah. It's a... This is a very individual project. It's a hard project to ask for help on. So when we do get places like I had people help me with it blowing up the TNT, you know what I mean? Doing the art for the screen or something. Yeah, I guess if somebody wanted to put some sort of artwork on the screen in the short term, they could. But I've said that that was a prank option, and nobody ever took me up on it. On the whole, though, this goal is in here not because I'm worried about achieving this goal as is, but because if I add too many other responsibilities or take on too many other things, this goal will become jeopardized. Like, I need to find ways to streamline other parts of my life so I can keep this in my queue toward the top.
Do you have the work
So-
that you need to do on the pinball machine like broken down into what steps so you can like time that out better?
Yeah, well, I have a list of the steps. I haven't like done time estimates or anything. Like, but like based on where we're at in the process now, and based on how far out, like the season's not going to end like less than 3 months after Decked Out comes out. Tango has 3 months of decked out stuff for us to do. Like the game unfolds over time somehow. I don't know what that means exactly, but
As
Decked
long as
Out
you
hasn't
think you'll have
launched.
enough time, because I don't want you to
I-
suddenly be in holiday season and you'll be like, uh-oh, I don't actually have enough time.
Yeah, I mean, there might be some other stuff that takes a hit. Like, I might not get to do as much Halloween builds as I would in a normal year, but, you know, um, this is going to be the priority. Getting this done by the end of the season, looking good for the world download. Yeah, like Scar was visiting it today. I popped in on his birthday stream for a few minutes, and he came to fly by the pinball machine. It looks so much better with the stuff like marked out and whatnot. We're gonna get there. So yeah, like I said, this goal is primarily there just as a backstop. Right now, it is not in any danger. The second goal here, sustainably meet fans for signings and TCG games in 2024. Losing the car is endangering that. But basically, I'm going to be working with NJ on making some of the logistics and finance stuff of this work. If we can get invited by local conventions, or if I can get invited by local conventions, if they can cover my hotel room, part of my airfare, I can go play TCG with a lot of people. But we gotta get those invites. And the connections I had with a lot of the conventions that I've been invited to like that in the past, with COVID and everything, they stepped away, they're not there anymore, blah, blah, blah. So, like, we're going to have to rebuild some of that relationship stuff. And part of that's going to be starting to go to conventions that we aren't being paid to go to. And that's not great when we're already in some financial peril. I was going to scout out Southern Fried Gaming Expo this summer, and that was one of the trips I canceled as a result of the financial stuff. I canceled my Chicago Pinball Expo trip, which, you know, here's the thing, is, like, I'm not necessarily the sort of person who should have a booth at Chicago Pinball Expo, but I was hoping to get up there and try and talk to some sponsors. If we could get one or two, like, reasonable sponsors at this point, that could save a lot of stress for me. And so I don't want to give up on that entirely, but I also know that I've already spent a lot of time and a lot of money traveling to places to talk to potential sponsors, and most of them haven't worked out. So we shouldn't throw too much money after that now. I'm going to prioritize going to events to hang out with and meet fans, and I'm also going to lean pretty heavily on the social network that I've created just by going to conventions for all these years and meeting a bunch of people. So, like, I know people that, like, are willing to let me crash on their floor at PAX Unplugged in December. I'm not gonna go to PAX if we don't get our panel approved. I talked to Beef. We're gonna put in a panel about making the TCG, and I hope we get it. And if we do, I'm gonna get up there. But PAX doesn't cover airfare. They don't cover hotel rooms, so I'm sleeping on the floor. That's fine. But by December we might have games. Like even if we like in theory everybody should have gotten their games in the mail by then. And even if for some reason they haven't, Beef might at least have some demo copies we can go out and play with folks. So I know December is technically not 2024. December this year isn't, but like that's going to be a big priority for 2024. And part of making that work financially might be, once again, me going back and getting a day job. Because if I can get a day job that's relatively flexible with letting me travel on weekends... Amanda says timeline for TCG is fall 2023. Yeah, that is. Right now, as far as I know, they're still on track to ship on time. But I don't want to schedule an event anywhere near the shipping date. Because if it gets pushed, that could be bad. It hasn't gotten pushed. But I want to be cautious. Especially because we don't have a lot of extra money at this point. So... yeah. So that's that. If y'all know people who run conventions and they would want myself or other hermits to be guests, the best thing you could do is to get them to reach out to us or get us their contact information. I'm not going to be the only hermit who wants to hit the road in 2024. So we might also be in situations where we can go in on hotel rooms together to save money. But like realistically, this is one of the best reasons to get a day job again, is because then I don't have to worry about trying to make these trips financially viable. We could just pay for it out of my salary. Like I used to go to way more conventions before I went full time on YouTube. But yeah, in the short term, if we can find ways to make that not bleed us out faster, that's a priority there. Okay, any other questions or thoughts on any of this before we move on? Tommy, do you have anything in particular?
No.
We've from a process standpoint, I should mention that Tommy and I have been working on a meetup location evaluation system for scouting out potential places for meetups. And I sent Tommy on a scouting thing to a place in Long Island that seems like was a worthwhile trip. We might use that for a meetup next summer. We'll have to see. Mahi says the only con runner I know does an anime con. No worries. Okay. So yeah, we're working toward getting more FaceTime. All of the hermits acknowledge that like AI is going to create a lot of problems for us, and that people knowing for sure we're real will be increasingly valuable. So, yeah.
Also, I don't know if you saw, I did link you that document.
Yeah, I saw it.
Cool.
Sorry, I haven't had time to comment on it yet.
It's okay.
But yeah, that's one of those things, like, it's not particularly urgent yet.
Right.
So, yeah, just in terms of my queue, yeah. Okay. Let's move on then. Identify where we are reliant on Twitter and move that functionality in-house or elsewhere. Yeah, Twitter dying has been a huge problem. This has led to, like, the website usability and changes, adding the calendar and the Twitter stuff, which we talked, or sorry, not Twitter, newsletter, switching over to monthly. That stuff we technically discussed earlier because we accidentally listed this twice. But one of the big incentives for doing this is to make us less dependent on Twitter. It seems like it's getting worse quicker and quicker. In the short term, joehills.net is going to be your best place to always find me. But yeah, that's not necessarily great. Could the HermitCraft website be updated? Oh, that's a whole thing. HermitCraft website is not something I run, and it's on a software stack that's like So I'm a Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP guy, and I think the HermitCraft website is like Windows, IIS. I don't know what the database is. Probably Microsoft SQL and then like ASP.NET or something. I can't work on it without. I'm not the right person to work on it. I'm not responsible for it. I don't host it. But that's, yeah. No, we're more talking about the joehills.net website. Realistically, the servers we have, we could also. That would be this in the same way that we spun up the alternative streaming service. If we had to spin up a Discord alternative, because of Discord getting bought by Facebook or going all in on AI using our data, then we would probably basically build joehills.net/community, and it would be this to some degree. Set up a TeamSpeak server there too. So maintaining the physical hardware we're leasing right now makes sense. But yeah. So that's where we are at on that. Is there any other stuff that people are like they were really leaning on Twitter for that we are no longer doing well?
I know you've been posting stuff to your Nashtadon, and I think that's been really good as a replacement for Twitter since I just like the pun, first of all.
Yeah.
But
I like the pun too.
Twitter no longer has what it was used for, that and has it functioning well, and it is actively getting worse.
Amanda says, I'm hesitant about the new social media platforms. The best way for me to see what you post is when you post the links here. That's the other thing, is in the short term, I'm probably going to be cross-posting a lot of that stuff to the spam things you made or whatever, spam photos you snap channels. So, yeah, even if you don't have a Mastodon account, the links still work. So, yeah. It's not great, but, it'll hold us over. Mahi Zero says, I noticed that Mastodon reopened their Mastodon social group and joined that yesterday. Oh, awesome. I have looked at the liability concerns about self-hosting a Mastodon server, and it seems like recent EU law changes are making that even more challenging from a privacy standpoint. Oh, there's also a bunch of stuff with EU law changes. This isn't really a website change, but I mean, technically. I don't know. But no, YouTube sent me this thing where they're like, if you want to still keep showing ads in Europe, you have to do a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm like, ads on my videos in Europe make me like $10 a month, maybe 20. You couldn't pay me to do the, like, they're like, you need to hire a firm that is registered in Europe to be blah blah, to represent your company on behalf of this if this commission has inquiries. And I'm like, yeah, we're just gonna probably end up writing off that revenue. But yeah, there's a lot of new data laws going through that make doing a lot of things more challenging, is the short version. And yeah, so I'm not gonna start self-hosting my own Mastodon anytime soon. If anything, I would just start using the blog on the website to post more short one-paragraph things with a single picture, which maybe I should have been doing this whole time. And I'm saying that out loud. Probably should. Okay. Tommy, I think we're ready to move on to the next smart hole. What do you think?
I think we're ready.
Okay. So, prepare for the 2024 launch of Vanilla SMP Season 10 by experimenting with game design concepts during the final months of 2023. We talked about this extensively at Petitions today. Having the long-distance teleporters at the beginning of Season 10, as well as a 3-month build contest with the theme of company towns, where everybody builds potential parade routes. I don't think we need to go into that further here. I am going to have to write that up still, or, well, no, we'll figure it out. I was going to say, Tommy, did you do your own recording just for your personal reference, or do you need to wait for the VOD to go live to do minutes from Petitions?
I took a few minutes while we were at petitions, but I don't have a recording. So as soon as you make a video, I can finish the minutes. I think I have about 3/4 of it typed.
That's fine. Since I have not spent a lot of time with Corinne today, I can't guarantee that will get done this evening. Quinn was nice enough to take Corinne out for some ice cream, and so they got to pal around a little bit, but like, I do feel a little guilty. The problem is if I don't cram all this stuff into one day, then we never have any full days on the weekends, and we need those. So, you know, it's a trade-off, but yeah, I can't promise you I'm going to get that uploaded tonight. But yeah.
If it can be ready for
tomorrow.
Monday's newsletter, then that's all.
And that would
I
be
could
ideal.
want,
Yeah. Okay, cool. And even if in the newsletter you just say, hey, here's the page where the minutes will be, here's the VOD for now, I'm writing up the minutes today, check back in an hour or
whatever.
a day or something. Yeah, because the petitions are separate cycle from the newsletter. Yeah, the minutes are. Okay, thank you, Tommy. So yeah, I don't think we need to go into that any further. I created a new feedback vanilla SMP channel for people to comment on their thoughts as they play with the teleporters I put in already. And then this last one. Without having to change Corinne's schools mid-year, postpone having to start a new day job until after season 10 launches so I can attend the first recording sessions. This was looking like it was not going to be possible without making some pretty severe cuts. That bump in revenue came in from the Tumblr folks, and so, you know, and I mean, I did make a lot of other cuts, but we were able to avoid cutting most of the Discord community functionality. We are unable to add much more, but on the whole, like, we live to fight another day, which I did not expect when I started writing this up for NJ, and I'm shocked and pleasantly surprised. But we're not, like I said, entirely out of financial danger. So I'm going to be avoiding a lot of expenses, going to be paring things down wherever I can. Because part of the problem is we need to have enough money saved up, or we need to avoid burning through my savings so fast that we can't survive the hiatus. And we don't know what that hiatus is going to look like. So, yeah, that's the big thing there. I don't have a ton of marvelous pitch ideas for new revenue that I'm going to throw at y'all right now. A lot of the ones I did have revolved around renting warehouse space, building up a merch store, but that was dependent on me being able to drive around and a bunch of other stuff that's currently off the table. So, yeah. I'm going to continue following up with some of the sponsors that I've already spoken to via email and stuff or phone, but I'm not going to be going out of my way to spend money on trips to go talk to them. We're going to try and staunch that bleeding rather than chasing lotto tickets on that stuff. Realistically, like, there's no scenario here where, like, Corinne starves or doesn't have a roof. Like, but I might have to go back to work and we might have to make more cuts if things got really bad somehow. That's just kind of where we're at there. And this is going to be continuously a concern until I either get a new job or if season 10 by some miracle just blows everything else out of the water. Because, like, we had a huge spike in revenue in March 2022. Our best month for revenue possibly ever. I had some inaccurate charts I shared with NJ where I'm like, ignore these other things. Or ignore the last month, but the other months. Yeah, March 2022, I'm looking at my conversation with NJ. March 2022 was our best month for revenue basically ever. And that was when season 9 launched. The problem was that it dropped off pretty hard after that. Like, I think people just were like, oh, wow, I saw Joe make a bunch of money off of, you know, the, what do you call it? You know, off the launch. I'm sure he's good now. We don't have to keep tipping. But the problem was, you know, if it's not, you know, you can't, like, you can't stretch that money from one good month forever. And especially now that was 15 months ago. We're definitely well past the point that could be stretched. We basically stretched that money into the early summer, but part of the problem was I was behind on a bunch of stuff because I didn't have any money in January or February, so it's like I'm trying to cover costs that, like, stuff I had postponed buying or whatever. Was March 2022 the people who had been waiting during the soon to donate? Yeah. So Toxic says, to a certain extent, jobs give you more flexibility the longer you've been there, starting sooner rather than taking just the first 2 weeks of the season off. Well, that was actually part of this too. I was just like, okay, if I go to the community and I tell them, look, here's the financial situation. We've got to lay everybody off and shut down most of the Discord functionality. Some people were going to leave. And we needed to know how bad that number was now so that I could have time, if needed, to start a new job 5 months before Season 10 launches. Not... The problem was, when I started running all the numbers on this, I was looking at it, I was like, we're going to run out of money right before the hiatus starts. Which is the worst time to run out of money, because that would have also been right around Christmas, and companies don't like hiring in December. It's a bad time to get a job. So, to some degree, I was looking at this from the practical standpoint of the best time to get a new job would be after Season 10 launches. The second best time would be mid-August, because that way I can build up enough goodwill with the employer that even if I needed some flexibility when Season 10 launched, they would know I was cool. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's part of why we were having this conversation now, and not when I actually completely ran out of retirement savings that I could burn through paying a huge tax penalty on. Because in order to, like, because, like, if there was going to be a shock here, we needed the shock to be far enough out that we could fix it. And once again, I cannot say enough how much the folks signing up because of the Tumblr campaign really made a huge difference here. They drastically shifted the trajectory of what we're doing for the next 6 months here. And I really appreciate it. And I want to demonstrate that appreciation by getting those videos out, getting those streams with a strong, you know, like, focus and energy. Not distracted, stressing out about Discord terms of service problems, right? Because this stuff just eats at me. It's stupid. I know I shouldn't let it bother me, but, like, it just... Like, when we had to we took a month-long break on the Discord in October of last year while I was traveling. And part of the reason for that was it used to be that I would get in the shower and I would think about Minecraft builds or jokes or ideas for collabs. And all I was thinking about was stuff about, like, Discord structure, moderation policies, terms of service. It just was eating too much of my brain. And the obvious solution is to be so good at playing Minecraft, I can just hire Tommy full-time. Because I 100% trust Tommy to run this community full-time in a salaried position. But I don't have a salary to pay Tommy. And so, as a result, I'm constantly taking this stuff on myself that I don't want to take on. And so, anyway, yeah. I feel like we're at a good compromise in terms of... Right now, the Discord, we're going to basically keep it running the way it's been running, which I kind of know what to expect from that. I expect the additional staff meetings to decrease my stress rather than increase it, so that seems like a good use of something, if we cut it down to only 4 staff members, something over $80 a month, but not necessarily, too much. I think that's a worthwhile reinvestment there. But yeah, we've got to get the art part of this. We've got to get the creative part of this. Like, if you look at the what we were able to do, the hermits on the perimeter, in this last week, like, HermitCraft can do a lot of stuff that brings so many people joy, and I'm very excited to be a part of it. And I want to make sure that y'all here have a cool place to hang out because you appreciate that common interest in this thing that brought you joy and brings so many people joy. But I also need to make sure that I find a balance between where I put my effort and my resources, because, like, basically for most of the pandemic, I was financing a lot of this stuff just out of my freelance developer work, and that wasn't sustainable in the long run. It's not necessary at the same, like, during the pandemic, paying the staff to run game nights for people who couldn't go outside made a lot of sense. So we don't need to spend as many hours on that anymore, but it's a new world. It's a different world. And, we need to respond to that actively and creatively. So yeah, like I said, I think this goal is achievable without having to change Corinne's school mid-year, postpone having to start a new day job until after Season 10 launches so I can attend the first recording sessions. We are going to have our first planning sessions about Season 10, our first serious ones. We've had some really out there, goofy suggestions so far, but, like, we're going to really start that next week. Like I said, usually it's 4 to 6 months between when we start planning and when a season launches. So I'm looking forward to being involved in that. And, yeah. Tommy, is there anything I'm missing on this point? Anything you would want me to clarify or go into more depth on? I feel like we've been here for almost 2 hours, so we should probably wrap up. But I don't want to leave anything out if I left anything out.
I don't think we're leaving anything out. Something I did want to make as a suggestion is, what if we revisited having goals on the Patreon, where we can say, hey, at this amount of income per month, we can have this on the Discord, or, like, we can have me be full-time, or, like...
Yeah. So there's a few things about that. We ran into a problem. We had one guy that I banned who was giving $1,000 a month. And so also when people talk about, like, oh, are you afraid to ban somebody because they tip a lot or whatever? Like, no. We've had to ban somebody before here who was a $1,000 a month Patreon patron. But the problem is, if some of those goals are things that would be challenging to add or remove as income fluctuated, like, if I said, okay, I need an extra, I don't know, like, in your, what's a good salary in your metro area? Just ballpark. I'm not going to hold you to this later.
I genuinely do not know.
Okay, so, like,
The nearest big city to me is Boston.
Okay. So, like, if I said, hey, if I had an extra $70,000 a year, I would hire Tommy. That might be insultingly low for Boston. I don't know.
I think that's insultingly high almost. For me, at least.
Well, I don't know.
I wouldn't know.
My point is,
I've never been a salaried employee.
Yeah. So, like, 70 divided... Well, and also, if you actually have employees, like, you end up paying, like, an extra 10 to 20% in benefits and other stuff. So it might be, like, to budget to pay you $70,000, I might need $86,000, right? So let's say I had $86,000 as the target for the annual, and we divide that by 12. 86,000 divided by 12. So I said, hey, if the Patreon had an extra $7,100 in it every month, I would hire Tommy full-time. The problem is, if one month we hit that goal, but it's like one guy giving us the extra 71,000 or 7,100. Oh my gosh, I'm tired. I don't want you to quit your other job to take a job that I can't guarantee your salary on, right? Um, so because I thought about like setting a goal for like we should bring these meetings back. Can we afford it? And I'm just like, we can't afford not to bring these meetings back. I should just do this and hope it works out okay. Uh, but like, yeah, I don't. I would have a hard time. Part of the problem we had too is the Patreon goals in the past were always written assuming we would have a certain level of tips coming in to cover other costs, right?
Right.
But we've had a few months where very few tips came in. And so that's another thing where it's like we could say, hey, if we made $6,000 a month on Patreon, we could afford this. But what we're actually saying is, as long as tips don't drop by $2,000 that month, and we've had some months with some pretty low tips, you know. So
I do think
I'm
there's merit, even if it's not in Patreon goals specifically. There is merit into looking into other sources of revenue or things we can do to help. You know.
I think the single best source of revenue for me right now is probably just getting a job. I can't think of anything else that could so quickly bring in so much money. Like, I've tried sponsorships. The thing is, the sponsorships I don't want. I'd rather, like, there's a lot of stuff I look at and I'm like, I would rather go back to having a day job than do an Audible ad or a VPN ad. And people are like, well, that's where the money is, Joe. And I'm like, but there's also money in having a job. Like, so some of this is about, like, how much do I want my art to be adulterated, like, versus other stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I'm curious about, but, like, other options for revenue. But, like, realistically, uh, most most things aren't gonna bring in a big jump. Like this Tumblr thing was kind of a fluke, and it was a fantastic fluke. I'm very happy for it, but I couldn't replicate it on purpose, you know. Um, and like I said, um, I was looking at some plans to rent warehouse space and spin up some merch stuff, but realistically, like without the car, that the logistics of that completely change. It's not necessarily impossible, but I'm back to square one on it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, knowing a target would be motivating to Tumblr because no matter how unrealistic they like hitting a goal, fandom really likes playing together to help out. Yeah, you're not wrong, and this is probably something worth revisiting when we're not 2 hours into this meeting and 5 hours into streaming today.
What if we put out an open feedback for folks to just suggest ideas? You know, nothing set in stone, nothing guaranteed, just suggestions or ideas or things that may help contribute to that.
I don't know how to scope that request, I guess. It's an interesting... I don't have an ethical problem with it, but I don't... And, like, I can tell I'm getting tired and starting to spiral. I'm, like, getting too fractal with this stuff. I don't think you're wrong, but I don't know how to do it right now. I think it's too close to dinner time. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm starting to fade. Like, I'm also looking at the list, like, I mean...
Do you
so I guess...
revisit this on Monday?
I mean, I don't think it's in scope for the newsletter thing. This is maybe, I mean, I was going to say, this isn't really the staff's job either. The staff isn't here to make money, is a fun thing to say out loud, but I've never actually thought about it that way. But yeah, like it's literally really not anybody's job here to generate revenue. That's one of the, yeah. That's I hadn't considered that. But yeah, I mean, it's my job to find money. It's not the people who are paying to be here's job to find money. It's my job to find money.
I think that's a missed opportunity. I think if you open that feedback up to hearing, You know, some ideas people might have, you may hear an idea you never considered before.
I mean,
And
you're
I'm not
you're
saying
not
you
wrong
have to do
logically.
things you don't want
I
to
just I
do.
just I just don't know how to ask the question. I don't know like if we create the channel, like what is the question we are asking? You know what I mean? Like money, huh? Question mark? Like
I mean, if
uh
it can be as simple as that.
uh yeah, so let's okay, I'll create feedback revenue. What I don't want is I don't want to get into the minutia of costs because I have spent so much time chasing down and like cutting almost everything I can. And in the process, meanwhile, my landlord's calling me up and like, "Hey, the rent's going up." Like, great. I was able to talk him down to only jacking it up $50 a month, but that's still $600 a year. Anyway, I'll get stressed if we start talking about costs. But yeah. Okay. So, feedback revenue. Money. Huh? Done. Pin that tweet. Now that tweets aren't on Twitter, they're out in the atmosphere. They're anywhere.
Wow. Life is so beautiful.
I know. Kindle says, hit X level, I'll go into the pool and make another YouTube poetry video. I mean, arguably, running a Kickstarter for a particular project wouldn't be a terrible idea. I just don't necessarily, like, know what that project would be. And I don't know how to make that project without postponing, or without getting in the way of finishing the pinball machine. Like, there's an argument, like, if there was a project that I could do during the hiatus... Okay, so this is actually really... Okay, so this is actually already being productive. Yeah, if we had a Kickstarter for something during the hiatus... The problem is the Kickstarter has to have an appeal beyond the people who would normally tip. Because, like, if the people who would normally tip are just putting the money into a Kickstarter escrow rather than tipping via PayPal, we're actually worsening my short-term financial situation. Yeah, we can revisit this. We'll come back to this. So, yay, we did a thing.
We did all our goals and more. Incredible.
Kindle says, literally go swimming and read your poetry. I mean, yeah, but it will be January. And maybe that's what people will pay for. But, yeah.
Ice skating.
Realistic. Yeah. I actually really like ice skating.
Aw.
We should do more ice skating meetups. Tommy, find a good ice rink where we can play TCG and go ice skating and have pizza.
I can find
I
a
can't.
bad ice skating rink.
Well, so this is actually the sort of thing, though, too. Like, this is an example of where some of that money would go if we had more money. Is literally me saying to Tommy, I'm going to be in Boston for this event. Find an ice skating rink where we could have a meetup and play TCG and eat pizza. Like we're so close. Like, once the TCG comes out, like, in-person meetups are going to be huge. And if I can find a way to combine in-person meetups with also, like, merch distribution and sales, if I start... Because a lot of conventions, if they pay for you to go, they'll also give you a table where you can sell stuff. And if I have a table where I can sell stuff, well, then, hey, that's something.
And merch is on the table.
Yeah.
Literally.
Like, we can bring this back around, but okay. It's 5 o'clock. It's 5:02. I think we need to end the call. Tommy, is there anything we missed?
I think we're good.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for putting up with me for 2 hours. I hope that this was more reassuring than discouraging. 'Cause, like, yeah, I tried. I'm gonna go collapse. We did it. I should have had Quinn as a musical guest for this, but I don't. Okay, until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring.